Picture this: a boy with calloused hands, barely 19, standing at the center of a dusty village square. His shirt clung to his thin frame, damp with nervous sweat. Around him, whispers rose like a storm, mocking laughter from the men, pitying gasps from the women. And there she stood before him, a towering woman, her skin gleaming with age and strength, her frame carved from years of discipline and labor. 70 years old, yet her presence silenced the crowd. She wore a gown of gold, heavy as the crown of a queen. When their eyes locked, his knees trembled, not from love, but from the weight of the vow he was about to take. They said he had no choice. They said poverty had chained him to her fate, and yet none of them could have guessed what her secret would reveal just 7 days later. They said Musa had been sold to a curse, a poor boy forced into marriage with a woman 3 times his age, a woman whose truth would shake the entire village. But what was she hiding? And why did the people whisper, "He won't last a week"? Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on that subscribe button so you never miss gripping stories like this one. Musa was only 19. The son of a farmer whose land had long been swallowed by debt, his life was measured not in dreams, but in the number of meals his family could scrape together each week. His father's tools were rusted, his mother's hands cracked from years of labor. For Musa, hope had always been something distant, something reserved for other people's children. And yet, in the quiet hours of dawn, he often wondered what it might feel like to live without hunger pressing on his ribs, without shame lingering in his chest every time collectors passed their doorway. And then there was Madame Veronica, 70 years old, but unlike anyone the villagers had ever seen. Her body was carved with muscles earned from decades of discipline, her arms stronger than men half her age. She dressed in colors too bright for her years, gold, crimson, emerald, as though daring the world to remember her. Rumors followed her like shadows. Some said she bought her youth in the form of husbands, poor boys plucked from desperation, forced to call her wife. Others claimed she sought more than companionship, that each marriage ended with whispers and questions no one dared ask aloud. The village itself was divided, dusty huts leaning into one another on one side, and Veronica's mansion rising in flamboyant contrast on the other. A palace of marble floors, chandeliers that caught the sun, and gates taller than any man. To the villagers, it was less a home and more a warning, a reminder of the chasm between wealth and hunger. And on the day Musa was summoned to stand before her, they all understood what was about to unfold. His family's debt had grown too deep, their land too barren. An arrangement had been made, a price had been set, and Musa, he was the sacrifice. But Veronica didn't choose Musa for love. She chose him for something else, something only she knew, something that would reveal itself in 7 days. The wedding was not a celebration, it was a spectacle. In the heart of the village square, under the shade of a weary old tree, Musa stood beside Madame Veronica. His eyes, wide and uncertain, betrayed the storm inside him. The villagers did not clap for joy, they clapped to mock. Men leaned into one another, snickering that the boy had been bought like cattle. Women shook their heads, whispering prayers for his fragile youth. Children laughed aloud, calling him grandma's groom. And though the drums beat with rhythm, the air was thick with humiliation, not cheer. Musa's family watched in silence, their faces carved with shame, knowing their son's dignity had been sold to cover debts that could never truly be repaid. Veronica, however, stood tall. Her gown shimmered like molten gold, and her smile was a weapon, broad, confident, daring anyone to challenge her. Yet beneath that smile lay something Musa could not name. For even in her mansion, far removed from the mocking eyes of the village, Veronica's behavior unsettled him. She moved freely through her vast corridors, showing him rooms overflowing with riches he had never dreamed of. But one wing of the mansion remained locked. Day and night she guarded it, her footsteps lingering by its door, her voice sharp whenever Musa's gaze drifted too long toward the forbidden side. Soon, the gossip reached him. Villagers who once mocked him now warned him. They whispered of her other young husbands, boys who had walked into her gates but never walked out. Some said she consumed their strength to preserve her own. Others claimed they had run, unable to endure her cruelty. But no matter the version, all stories ended the same. None of them were ever seen again. Musa lay awake in the nights, his heart pounding, wondering what had truly happened in that locked wing. He counted the days with dread, and though he didn't yet understand why, the number 7 haunted his mind. Because on the 7th night, Musa would finally learn the truth. But before then, he began noticing the first signs of danger. At first, married life seemed almost like a dream Musa did not deserve. For a boy who once shared scraps of food with his younger siblings, Veronica's mansion was an endless banquet. Gold-plated dishes filled with roasted meats, fruits imported from distant cities, and clothes tailored from the finest fabrics draped over his thin shoulders. For the first time, his stomach was full, and yet his heart was uneasy, because every gift came with a condition. Veronica never let him step beyond the iron gates after dark. "It's dangerous," she said with a smile that revealed nothing. But Musa wondered, what danger could lurk in a village where he had walked freely all his life? Night after night, as the moon carved silver across the marble floors, Veronica disappeared into her private gym. There she lifted weights twice her size, her arms bulging with unnatural strength. Musa could hear her from the other end of the hall. Grunts mixed with a rhythm of strange chants, words he did not recognize, words that chilled him. And when he wandered too close to the forbidden wing, he saw what he was never meant to see. Long, jagged scratches carved deep into the walls, as though something inside had clawed to escape. Then, one evening, a sound froze him where he stood. Veronica's voice, low but urgent, speaking into a phone. Musa pressed himself against the wall, straining to hear, and the words he caught made his stomach twist with terror. "This time, he's perfect," she whispered. "Strong heart, pure blood." In that moment, Musa understood. The wealth, the gold, the meals, they were not gifts of love. They were preparation. But Musa didn't know. What lived inside that locked room was the real reason Veronica married him. By the 30th day, even the village began to change toward Musa. Where once they mocked him, now they avoided him. Men who once shared palm wine with his father no longer greeted him at the market. Women pulled their children closer when he passed, and in hushed tones, the same phrase repeated, "He will disappear, just like the others." Musa carried their words home like stones in his chest, but he said nothing. What could he say? That he too feared the shadows in his own house? That each night the locked wing seemed to breathe like a living thing? One afternoon, his childhood friend Daniel slipped through the mansion gates, desperate, eyes full of warning. "You must run," Daniel begged. "Leave before she swallows you too." But Musa shook his head. Run? And leave his parents drowning in debt again? Leave his younger siblings without food or school fees? No. As much as fear gnawed at him, Musa told himself this was his burden to carry. If he left, his family would pay the price. And so he stayed, even as the walls of the mansion pressed closer around him. Veronica, on the other hand, grew oddly tender. She would reach for his hand at meals, her grip firm, her voice laced with possession. "You are mine, Musa. No one else can touch you," she whispered, her gaze so intense it pinned him where he sat. It was affection twisted into a chain. Musa smiled when she smiled, nodded when she spoke, but inside, dread grew like a shadow he could no longer ignore. One night, unable to silence his curiosity, Musa crept closer to the forbidden wing. The door loomed before him, cold iron under his trembling fingers, and then he froze. From the other side of the wall came a sound that pierced his soul, a voice, soft, weak. Someone was crying. The cries behind the door haunted Musa until he could no longer endure the silence. On the 40th night, with Veronica away in her midnight training, he stole the heavy key from her dressing table. His hands trembled as he slid it into the lock. The iron door groaned, reluctant to open, as though warning him to turn back. But Musa pushed forward. The moment the door creaked wide, the air shifted. Cold, damp, heavy. His chest tightened as his eyes adjusted to the dim glow within. What he saw stole the breath from his lungs. The walls were lined with frames, pictures of Veronica, younger in some, older in others, but always standing beside a different young man, smiling as though each one belonged to her forever. Musa moved closer, his heart hammering. He counted them, dozens of boys, each one no older than him, each one gone. These were the vanished husbands the villagers whispered about. They hadn't left her. They hadn't run. They had all ended here. On a wooden table lay a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed and brittle. Musa opened it with shaking fingers. The words inside seared into his mind, descriptions of rituals, ceremonies, and chants he had heard echoing through the mansion walls, and then the lines that froze him in place. The youth is the vessel, his blood the offering, his heart the key to preserve my strength, my beauty, my years. Musa staggered back, bile rising in his throat. The gifts, the food, the gold, they weren't signs of love. They were preparation for slaughter. And then everything changed. In that moment, Musa understood the truth with a clarity sharper than any blade. He wasn't Veronica's husband. He was her next sacrifice. Musa could no longer bear the secret. That night he confronted Veronica in her gilded hall, his voice shaking but defiant. "Why me?" he demanded. "Why choose me for this horror?" At first she smiled politely, a mask of civility hiding the storm beneath. But then, as if his question amused her more than angered, her lips curled into a cold, mirthless laugh. "Did you really think I chose you for love?" she said, her eyes glinting like steel. "Love is for children. You are my necessity." Her muscular frame, which had once seemed the product of discipline, now revealed its terrible truth. Every vein, every tendon, every ripple of strength had been forged not by exercise alone, but by consuming the essence of those who came before him. The missing husbands, the vanished young men, they were not gone. Their vitality had become hers, and now she looked at Musa as if already tasting what he had yet to give. Panic surged through him. He fled into the night, the corridors twisting around him like a labyrinth. He imagined the villagers coming to his aid, but their doors stayed closed, faces pressed against shutters, eyes wide with fear. They had learned long ago that Veronica's wrath could reach them all. Musa's pulse thundered. Every shadow felt alive, every footstep a threat, and all the while the calendar in his mind ticked down relentlessly. The 7th night was approaching, and that was when her ritual would be complete. The 7th night arrived with a chill that wrapped the mansion in an almost sacred silence. Veronica moved with precision, her every motion deliberate, as though the house itself awaited the culmination of her dark ceremony. Musa was locked inside the chamber, the heavy door slamming shut behind him, echoing through the marble halls. His heart pounded against his ribs, each beat a drum of desperation, each breath a prayer he dared not speak aloud. Outside, his mother knelt on the cold earth, hands clasped tightly, murmuring words of hope into the night, a fragile beacon against the overwhelming darkness. Veronica circled him, her gaze sharp, her strength intimidating, preparing to complete the ritual that had consumed so many before him. And then, by sheer chance, or perhaps fate, Musa's eyes fell upon a small, concealed weapon, left behind by one of her previous victims. Trembling, he seized it, a lifeline amid the terror. The struggle that followed was raw, brutal, a collision of desperation against centuries of predatory power. Veronica overpowered him at first, her movements fluid, almost supernatural, but Musa struck with all the courage and fear he could summon. His blade pierced the ritual altar, and the reaction was instantaneous. A wave of energy surged, knocking them apart. Before his eyes, Veronica's body began to betray her. Muscles sagged, skin wrinkled, hair grayed in moments, and the towering figure of menace crumbled into a feeble, frail woman. The years she had stolen, the vitality she had consumed, all returned to the void, leaving her a shadow of herself. And in that moment, the mansion seemed to exhale, releasing the tension that had gripped it for decades. The villagers, finally emboldened, stormed in, witnessing the scene and understanding the miracle. The curse was broken. In the end, Musa survived, not because he was the strongest nor the cleverest, but because he dared to face the truth. He confronted fear, deception, and a darkness that had haunted the village for decades. Veronica's secret died with her, but the mark she left behind, on Musa, on his family, on the village, would linger far longer. Some say power and beauty come at a price, but when that price is human dignity, it will always destroy itself. Wealth without conscience, strength without compassion, cannot endure. Slowly, life returned to the village. The whispers of fear faded, replaced with respect for the young man who had faced the impossible. Musa's family, freed from the chains of debt, rebuilt their modest home, their smiles cautious but genuine. The villagers, once silent witnesses, now saw him for what he truly was, a survivor, a symbol that courage can outlast cruelty. If you were in Musa's place, would you have stayed silent or fought to escape? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if this story shocked you, hit that like button. It helps us reach more people. And don't forget to subscribe for more gripping stories every week.